Criminal Law Review Part 1, Version 1.0. This video is not intended as a substitute for legal advice. If you have any legal concerns, please consult a lawyer. In this video, we're going to talk about justifying circumstances and mitigating circumstances. This is part of the JIMAA, often called as JIMAA, which stands for justifying, exempting, mitigating, aggravating, and alternative. The reason why is because this is the most favorite topic in the bar exams for the last 19 years. Out of the JIMAA, justifying and mitigating were asked 19 or 12 times in the last 19 years. So first question is, what are justifying circumstances? These are those that make an act lawful that would otherwise be unlawful or make it a crime. In other words, there's a crime but there's no criminal, that's what they say. Meaning the person commits a crime per se, but actually is not criminally liable because of the presence of justifying circumstances. This concept you can also borrow from the Christianity's concept, which is justification, which means just if I've never sinned. Actually, this was the contention during, I think, the Reformation period, wherein they debated how can a man be justified. That's why we now have freedom of religion, right? So Galatians 2:16-17, know this, that a man is not justified by the works of the law, but by faith in Jesus Christ. Even when we have believed in Christ, that we might be justified by faith in Christ. Actually, this set apart yung mga nag-separate. That's why we now have the New World, the Western Hemisphere that influenced, with the concept of freedom of religion. Now, because sang una or before there was none, and until this time, this led to the separation. Ultimately, the marami ng mga denominations. But again, this verse shows that justification can be had by faith in one person. Now, what are the 6 justifying circumstances? So there are 6 SDDAFO. Self-defense, which is a very common concept when we talk about justifying circumstances. Defense of relatives and defense of a stranger, which could be a subset of self-defense. Kaya lang hindi self, but other people. Also, avoidance of greater injury or evil. And second, and the 5th and 6th would somehow be related. Fulfillment of a duty, but obedience to an order of a superior. However, may konti silang difference. Now, let's start with self-defense. It's based on the principle of self-preservation from mortal harm, from Cabanlig versus Sandigan Bayan. Naturally, may instinct ang tao na mag-preserve ng kanyang sarili. This is based on our inherent qualities as a human being to protect, repel, and save our person and our rights from impending danger or peril. The keyword also is impending, imminent, okay, actual. Hindi pwedeng imaginary, hindi pwedeng distant, hindi pwedeng gawa-gawa lang. But there must be an actual, imminent danger. SD is a defense that can be raised in criminal cases. It can be a justifying circumstances. If not all are met, it could be considered an incomplete self-defense, which is a mitigating circumstance. Tandaan, pag incomplete self-defense, it's a mitigating rather than justifying. Okay? So, kailangan nating malaman yung elements, yung tatlong elements, which is unlawful aggression. Okay, after that, letter R. So U and then R is reasonable necessity of the means employed to prevent or repel the unlawful aggression. So unlawful aggression must come from the person who was killed, for example, or we call this the original aggressor or the victim. Number 2, reasonable necessity is made by the person who defended himself. And number 3, there's lack of sufficient provocation on the part of the person defending themselves. So ito yung tatlo, which has an acronym of URL. So unlawful aggression and lack of sufficient provocation, pwede natin itong bundle together because the first one comes from the victim, the second one comes from the person, or we can call that the self-defender. Okay, and what went on between them should be the means or the reasonable necessity of the means employed. Now, isa-isahin natin para mas lubos nating maintindihan. Unlawful aggression, lumabas ito sa bar exam, it must be, again, actual or imminent. So, hindi pwedeng imaginary. Yung actual, opposite ng actual is imaginary. Hypothetical. So, papatayin mong tao and claim self-defense because you imagine that he will attack you. No, it must be actual. And imminent is meaning, kumbaga, it's unavoidable in a sense, or it's immediate. Okay, immediate without having the opportunity to compose moral equanimity. Makikita natin mamaya yan, no? So, actual or material unlawful aggression involves an attack with physical force or a weapon, demonstrating the aggressor's intent to cause injury or death. So, dapat yung attack na yan may intent to cause injury or death. Okay, pag walang intent based on the surrounding circumstances, pag yung ano yan, yung probably yung intent niya is prank lang, or yung intent niya is just to joke around, no? Then that's not qualified as unlawful aggression. However, meron tayong isang case mamaya na nag-joke siya, pinatay siya. We will learn that later. Now, imminent unlawful aggression is an impending attack, not a mere threatening attitude. So kanina, as what we've said, it must be imminent, which means it must be impending, near. Okay? The mere statement, papatayin kita, I will kill you, is not by itself considered actual or imminent unlawful aggression. So ito na, mas actual yung example natin. Sinabihan ka lang papatayin kita without the man moving, and you killed him, you cannot claim self-defense because it's not actual and it's not imminent. In other words, there's no aggression. Okay, there's no aggression. Now, unlawful aggression is the first and primordial element of self-defense according to People versus Habdani. Without it, the justifying circumstance cannot be invoked. Unlawful aggression is a sine qua non for self-defense. Without it, there can be no justified killing in defense of oneself. People versus Lopez. People versus Antonio, if there is no unlawful aggression, the other requisites of self-defense will have no factual and legal basis. What are the examples? So, para mas maintindihan natin, we go to actual cases. Ito, the unlawful aggressor aimed a revolver at another person with the intent to shoot or opened a knife and made a motion to attack. So this is an example of unlawful aggression. So may picture ako ditong nilagay, think sa ML Bangbang to. Nalibutan ko yung pangalan niya, pero that's actually the how the law or the Supreme Court says it. No, kinuha niya yung gun niya with the intent to shoot, with the intent to kill, making a motion to attack. That's unlawful aggression. Pwede na yan. Kumbaga, pwede na yang masubject to self-defense. Also, another one, a slap on the face is unlawful aggression. Rugas versus People. And it must be more than a mere threatening attitude. It must be offensive and positively strong. For example, aiming to throw a pot. So again, to describe it more, yung aggression must be beyond mere threat, but it must be positively strong. So yeah, the keyword is positively strong. It must have the intent to kill or intent to shoot. Okay, motion to attack. So attack, kill, intent, positively strong. So sa case na to, hindi ko lang masabi yung mga names, but GR218108 2018 case, ang unlawful aggressor, he was about to throw a pot. Or maybe I think yung pot na to is yung kaldero mismo or yung laman nito. But I think sinaktan siya ng self-defender, and that is justified. Now, may mga cases din na hindi ito kinonsider as unlawful aggression. So, a mere threatening attitude such as pressing a hand to the hip where a revolver is holstered. So, usually nakikita ito sa mga nag-aaresto, no, or sa mga police without further offensive action does not qualify as unlawful aggression, or sa mga taong may baril. People versus Robiso. And then pag yung tao naglagay lang ng kamay niya sa bulsa niya and then he was shot dead, the person cannot claim self-defense. Even the cocking of a rifle without aiming the firearm at any particular target is not sufficient to conclude that one's life was in imminent danger. People versus Pereira. This was recent lang, 2021. So, gincock niya lang yung gun niya, pinatay siya, the person who killed cannot claim complete self-defense. Not unlawful aggression when the aggression has ceased, stabbing the victim is no longer an act of self-defense. So, let's say, may unlawful aggression. Okay? Tinutukan ka ng baril. Pero, may spontaneous desistance. Tumakbo yung victim, papalayo. Pero hinabol mo at pinatay. You cannot claim self-defense because the aggression has already ceased. However, if you can justify that yung pag-run away niya is not to seize the aggression but to recuperate, or may term dyan to compose or recompose, or maybe to get a magazine or to get another magazine or to get a greater weapon, then that's a continuing aggression still. Okay, another hindi siya makonsider na self-defense is retaliation. Once the aggression has stopped, any subsequent action is no longer necessary for self-defense. Hindi na yan self-defense, paghihiganti na yan. People versus Samson. Now, may question sa bar exam. Medyo tricky, I would say. The original aggressor saw the thief robbing her jewelry. She then cocked her rifle and shouted, "Stop or I will shoot you." Okay? So, ang thief ang nag-self-defense. Okay, the thief then killed her and claimed self-defense. So, ang tanong, tama ba na ma-justify ba ang pagpatay ng thief sa babae because of self-defense? Question number 1, may unlawful aggression ba? So, nag-cock ng rifle ang babae. Stop or I will shoot you. So that's already a threat. Okay? Ang question, aggression ba yan? Another question, unlawful ba yan? So if you would say unlawful aggression, yes, because the thief or maybe the robber is already in the property of the woman. So pag inargue mo na, for example, na lawful yun kasi nasa property, he can kill the robber. Pero pag sinabi nating magnanakaw lang siya, I think hindi yan pwede patayin. Pero pag nag-argue ka na you have been threatened with your life, na mamatay ka, and then you also made that move to cock that gun, maybe the victim cocked that gun, that's a lawful aggression kasi na-threaten siya sa security niya, sa kanyang person. So when she made that move, that's lawful aggression, and when the thief killed her, then the thief cannot claim self-defense. Pero pag inargue natin na hindi yun lawful, yung pagkak ng gun ng babae, then the thief cannot claim self-defense kasi ang ginawa naman ng babae is lawful. Now, two kinds of unlawful aggression: actual and imminent. So sinabi natin kanina, actual means positively strong, okay, with intent to injure or to kill. Imminent unlawful aggression is an attack that is impending or at the point of happening. So tandaan natin ito, at the point of happening. Okay, the attack must be at the point of happening, and actual means it's positively strong. So dalawa yan. Now, ano yung test para masabi natin na ang isang aggression ay unlawful? Whether the action of the original aggression puts in real life the life of personal safety of the person defending himself. So will it put the life of a person in peril? And then the peril must not be an imagined or imaginary threat. Next is battered woman syndrome. Although this is under the exempting circumstance, but sinama ko na lang because in a case of VAUSI, pag ang woman ay na-establish na siya ay na-diagnose ng battered woman syndrome, self-defense can be invoked without actual and imminent aggression. Without actual and imminent. At least mayroon lang at least 2 battering episodes, and at the final episodes she had an actual fear of imminent harm and an honest belief that force was necessary to save her life. So I think may case ito eh. I think it's in Cebu, no, the case in Cebu where she killed her husband, but during the time of killing, walang actual threat. I think natutulog lang yata nun. But the court, first the court declared her guilty, but nung lumabas na yung battered woman syndrome, she was acquitted. No, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the case na establish yung battered woman syndrome. Na although walang actual imminent threat nung pinatay niya yung husband niya, but it was established that she was a battered woman. Okay. The second element of self-defense is reasonable necessity of the means employed. So isa-isahin natin. The means employed must be commensurate to the nature and extent of the attack sought to be averted. So dapat commensurate ano yung sa Tagalog, kung sa Ilonggo kasi na angay o basta proportionate in a sense, no? It's proper, it's more or less equal. Now, hindi pwedeng let's say Armalite versus bread knife. But there's also a nuance there. May iba pang factors na pwedeng i-consider. Now, there must be a necessity of the course of action taken and a necessity of the means used. So, dalawa dapat. Both the action and the means. So, ano yung sinasabi nating course of action? The action must be defensive by nature. Okay? The aggression must still exist when the action was taken. It is no longer necessary when the unlawful aggression has ceased, as we have said. So, pag sinabi nating necessity of the course of action, dalawa dapat. First, it must be a defensive action. Hindi siya aggressive. Kasi nga, ang kabila yung naging aggressor eh. Ikaw, defender lang. And second, it must still exist when the defense was made. Second, the means used. Dito na ngayon ang usual na debate. Ang means or method na ginamit must be reasonable. So, iba-iba yung dapat i-consider. Yung nature of the weapon, the physical condition of the parties, the place and time or circumstances of the attack. Okay, tandaan ito. Lumalabas ito sa mga test. The law does not require absolute equivalence, only rational equivalence. Okay? Pag sinabing rational equivalence, based on the situation of the person defending himself at the time of the attack. Kung hindi pwedeng na ina-attack ka na, papatayin ka na, tapos nasa dilim kayo, tapos i-defend mo yung self mo, tapos sasabihin mo pa, ay ano kaya dito yung reasonable necessity of the means employed according to Article 11. Hindi pwede yan. Whatever is rational, whatever is rationally equivalent at that moment that can defend you, that is acceptable. That is reasonable means. Okay? Pag sinabi namang course of action, the defense itself must be reasonable. Okay? Pero pag attack na yan, it's no longer, no? So example, shooting the leg of a victim may be a reasonable means to prevent or repel unlawful aggression. So let's say yung attacker mo is only holding a knife but you have a gun. It's reasonable to shoot him in the leg if you can establish these things. Maybe at that time you only have a gun, nothing else, and then there's imminent danger, there's actual imminent danger, and there's no other means. So let's dive deeper into the word rational equivalence. It must be judged in light of the circumstances as they appeared to the person defending himself. This is from Abuyo versus People. So, kumbaga the Supreme Court says, wag kang agad-agad mag-judge sa tao. You put yourself into his shoes, try to understand his situation, try to understand his fears at that moment in time. The court should not demand that the accused conduct himself with the poise of a person not under imminent threat of fatal harm. So again, sabi ng court, wag kang mag-isip na as if nasa posisyon ka na wala ka namang threat. No? You put yourself again in a situation of the person defending himself. A person who is assaulted has neither the time nor the sufficient tranquility of mind to think, calculate, and choose the weapon to be used. So, Kambe versus people. Wala kang sufficient time to meditate, to choose your weapon, to choose your potions, kumbaga, to choose your SS. But you only have so much time, maybe few seconds, milliseconds to grab that weapon. And if it is the only option or the reachable thing, no, that you can get at that time, kita niyo sa mga pelikula, yung sinasakal na siya, tapos yung kamay niya maabot pa, tapos yung naabot niya lang is yung baril, no? So kahit ano lang yan, kahit kamay lang niyang ginagamit, but the gun could be rationally equivalent to the action or to the aggression against the person defending himself. The petitioner acted reasonably given the circumstances, as the aggressor was armed with a chainsaw and a gun. So ito naman, chainsaw massacre naman to, no? And the defender killed him because, again, grabe na yung weapon niya, chainsaw and a gun eh. Okay? So the Supreme Court reversed the ruling of the Court of Appeals sa Remigio versus People. So maybe this is gun versus chainsaw and a gun, then there's rational equivalence. Now, the third and last element is the lack of sufficient provocation on the part of the person defending himself. So the accused who claims self-defense must not have provoked the aggression of the victim. Hindi siya dapat yung nanguna na inatake siya. So provocation is sufficient. So kailan ba magiging sufficient ang provocation ng isang taong nag-defend? When it is proportionate to the aggression. So if aggression is killing, then provocation must be proportionate to it. So let's say yung chainsaw and gun, yung person na nag-defend sa kanyang sarili, hindi siya dapat gumawa or hindi niya dapat pre-provoke yung lumabas ng chainsaw and gun. Gamit din yung proportionate weapon or circumstance. So dapat hindi siya gumamit ng provocation, sufficient provocation. Either as a mitigating circumstance or as an essential element of self-defense, the reference is to excite one to commit the wrongful act and should immediately precede the act. Examples where there was sufficient provocation. So ito naman, real, actual case. The victim entered the accused's house, cursed at him, and wielded a knife which impelled the accused to commit the crime of homicide. So, meron bang sufficient provocation? Meron, pero on the part of the person who was killed. But on the part of the person who defended himself, wala. Okay? The victim's act of thrusting a bolo at the accused and threatening to kill him was not considered unlawful aggression, but was deemed sufficient provocation. The court explained that such act could enrage or obfuscate a person, mitigating the crime. So dito naman, I think sa Gotis versus People, yung nag-claim ng self-defense, siya rin naman yung nanguna. He thrusted a bolo. Okay? He threatened the aggressor, okay, with killing him. And therefore, he cannot claim self-defense, but he can only claim when he killed that person, he can only claim mitigating circumstance kasi siya mismo ay may sufficient provocation na ginawa. Examples where there was no sufficient provocation. So People versus Rambo Racal. Sa facts, Racal accused Jose Francisco of being a traitor in front of other tricycle drivers. Francisco responded by calling Racal gay and mocking his failed relationship. Racal then stabbed Francisco multiple times and the latter died due to fatal injuries. Issue whether calling Racal gay was sufficient to mitigate his uh, his liability. So pinatay ni Racal si Francisco dahil tinawag siyang bakla. And nag-claim si ano ngayon si Racal no ng mitigating circumstances. The court said that verbal taunts did not constitute sufficient provocation to mitigate his liability. The court emphasized that sufficient provocation must be immediate and proportionate to the gravity of the response, which was not the case here. Tinawag ka lang bakla, pinatay mo na agad, no? But therefore that's not proportionate or immediate. The court noted that the taunts occurred days before the stabbing, failing to meet the immediacy requirement. So again, immediacy and proportionality. Okay, so although hindi naman ito kasi self-defense, but he claimed mitigation, no? Kasi merong provocation sa kanya. So in other words, he was also claiming there's unlawful aggression, no? It did not tantamount to unlawful aggression. It's not even aggression itself. Therefore, he cannot claim the mitigation. No. Example where there was no sufficient provocation. A short but heated exchange of words or minor provocations like being shoved or cursed at were deemed insufficient to justify violent retaliation, such as stabbing or shooting. So, kung ang person na nag-defend na kanyang sarili ay ano lang naman nagkaroon sila ng heated exchange, okay? At minura niya yung pinatay niya, tapos yung minura niya, inatake siya at pinatay naman niya. So, hindi yon unlawful, hindi yon sufficient provocation on the part of the person who killed, no? Who made self-defense. Kasi it's not proportionate, no, to the attack to being attacked. Okay? So, instance where there is no self-defense but intent to kill. The presence of a large number of wounds, their location, and their seriousness would negate self-defense and instead indicate a determined effort to kill. So, ang person naman na nag-claim self-defense, pero kung titingnan yung autopsy at nakita na sobra-sobra yung paglaslas, no, parang super kill na, kumaga. Yung location, yung number of wounds, siguro like 70 na saksak. Hindi na yun self-defense. No? It's already an intent to kill. So, other considerations is that you can combine actually mistake of fact and self-defense. So, may isang case, very old case, during the American colonial period pa, US versus Achong. In this case, Achong killed another person because of mistake of fact. So he believed, I think the case was that he's a Chinese man, and then they are living somewhat in somehow like a dorm, and then it was nighttime, and then someone kumbaga nilock niya yung door, at after that may nagtangkang pumasok, no? That person kumbaga was actually just joking him around, or maybe somehow maybe just trying to prank him, but the person kept entering or forcing his way through the door. Achong shouted, "Who's that?" or nagpapakilala, but the person did not speak, I think. At ang ginawa niya, pinatay niya because he thought that that person was a robber or a killer. So, was he acquitted? Yes, because of self-defense and because of mistake of fact. Mistake of fact in criminal law is when someone misunderstands a fact which, if true, would have made their actions lawful. The mistake must be honest. So yung sa case na to, Actually, that was his roommate. Hindi pala yun robber, but it was his roommate, and maybe the reason why the roommate did not introduce himself at that night, because, well, maybe he was trying to scare Ah Chong. So the mistake must be honest, reasonable, and a matter of fact that negates the culpability needed to commit the crime. It applies when the mistake is without fault or carelessness. Other considerations: battered woman syndrome, as we've talked about kanina. Burden of proof is on the person or on the party that claims self-defense. The person who claims self-defense must prove all elements by credible, clear, and convincing evidence. Self-defense cannot be just a statement, it must be proven. So another species is defense of relatives. Same elements with self-defense. However, at this time, the element of unlawful aggression is made towards or against a relative of the person defending. So, ang crucial dito are yung enumeration ng relatives. So, spouse, ascendants, descendants. So, sideways, upwards, downwards. And legitimate natural or adopted siblings or relatives by affinity in the same degrees. So, uh, legitimate. No? Pag illegitimate ba, kasama. And then relatives by consanguinity within the fourth civil degree. So, by blood. So, cousin is included and under the fourth civil degree. If not all elements are complete, civil liability may still exist. So there's no criminal, but there's civil liability. Another is defense of strangers. Defense of strangers is a justifying circumstance where someone defends the person or rights of an individual not related to them. A stranger is any person not included in the enumeration of relatives that can be defended. So pag hindi included doon sa relatives, it's a defense of strangers. If not all elements are complete, civil liability may still exist. So still the same elements, however, the unlawful aggression was against a stranger. And dapat yung person na nag-defend must not be motivated by revenge, resentment, or other evil motive. Commonalities and differences. So sa commonalities, both require unlawful aggression against a relative or stranger and reasonable means. So the first one and the first two must be present. However, magkaiba lang yung direction. However, if not all elements are present or are complete, the civil liability may still exist. Differences in defense of relatives. If the relative provoked the offended party, okay, the accused must not have a part therein. So, dapat walang provocation sa offended party. By the offended party. By the relative pala nung nag-defend. In defense of strangers, the accused must not be induced by revenge, resentment, or other motive. So, yan yung difference nilang dalawa. Number 4. So, we now go to the fourth justifying circumstance, which is avoidance of a greater evil or injury, also known as state of necessity. It is a justifying circumstance where a person commits an act that causes damage to another to prevent a greater evil or injury. Examples: abortion to save the life of a mother. Actually, this is state of necessity. So, abortion is still illegal in the Philippines, but it is not a criminal act when it was done to save the mother. Swerving a car to avoid an unlighted truck resulting in the death of bystanders may be justified. Requisites of necessity: there must be an evil sought to be avoided, and it must actually exist, not imaginary. And then injury feared is greater than the injury caused. And number 3, no other practical and less harmful means to prevent it. So kanina sa pag-swerve ng sasakyan, may evil na ina-avoid, which is the accident, the collision. Injury feared, which is the collision, must be greater than the injury caused, which is hitting the bystanders. So dapat ma-establish din yan. No other means, wala nang ibang way but to swerve it, maybe to the right if there's no other direction. Now, liability, only criminal liability is excused, no civil liability, not civil liability. In other words, pwede pa rin pagbayarin ng damages, ng danyos ang taong may justifying circumstances. Great evil avoiders, kumaga, are still civilly liable. Persons for whose benefit the harm has been prevented are civilly liable in proportion to the benefit they may have received. So dito naman interlinked yung unjust enrichment, quasi contracts na pag na benefit sila, they should also be held liable. The state of necessity is not brought about by intentional provocation on the part of the party invoking it. Number 5, fulfillment of duty. Usually this is in relation to police officers. So the accused acted while performing a lawful duty. So the time was during a lawful duty, and the action must be a necessary consequence of performing a lawful duty. Let's look at one case to better understand this principle. Kabanlig versus Sandigan Bayan. Okay. Sa case na to, si SPO2 Kabanlig, a police officer, was involved in a critical incident while escorting a detainee, which is Valino. Valino was suspected of robbery. The police were tasked with retrieving stolen items from Valino's location. So nung kinuha na nila si Valino, who was not handcuffed, I don't know, for whatever reason, hindi siya nakaposas, Valino suddenly grabbed the M16 Armalite rifle of one of the officers, Mercado, and Valino attempted to escape from the police vehicle. As Valino made this move, chaos ensued. Kabanlig, witnessing the immediate threat posed by Valino, who was now armed with a powerful weapon, reacted instinctively. Without issuing a warning, he fired his weapon at Valino, hitting him multiple times. The situation escalated, with Kabanlig asserting that he acted in self-defense and in the performance of his duty to prevent Valino from escaping and potentially harming the officers. So the Sandigan Bayan convicted Kabanlig of homicide, ruling that sobra-sobra ang ginawa niya. It's not reasonable necessity of the means employed in the performance of his duty. However, upon appeal, anong sabi ng Supreme Court? His actions were justified. Bakit? Sabi ng Supreme Court, he acted in fulfillment of his duty and in response to an imminent threat. The court concluded that his actions were justified given the circumstances, thereby reversing the Sandigan Bayan's decision and ordering his immediate release from prison. The ruling underscores the principle that police officers may use necessary force to protect themselves and others from imminent danger, as established in the jurisprudence surrounding self-defense and fulfillment of duty. So, ang fulfillment of duty is a justifying circumstances if it is again done within a lawful duty and the action was necessary to prevent an imminent danger to themselves and to others. So, ang pag-fire ng warning shot, ang lawful duty is in correlation to the duty of the Philippine National Police. I pasted here the mission, vision, and functions. Key points: self-defense is based on self-preservation from mortal harm, while fulfillment of duty is based on performance of duty. So, magkaiba yung dalawa. So, di ba kanina sabi ni Kabanlig, ang argument niya is self-defense. Actually, the Supreme Court said it's more of like performance of duty. Kasi yung kanyang ginawa is not merely based on self-preservation, but to perform his duty primarily as a police officer while on duty. A policeman performing his duty is justified in using reasonable force to secure and detain an offender, overcoming resistance, prevent escape, recapture an escapee, and protect himself from bodily harm. So, justifying circumstances for a policeman to use reasonable force to repel an evil that they are duty-bound to prevent. Now, key points of fulfillment of duty. Ano ang pinagkaiba niya sa sa unlawful aggression as a self-defense? Unlike self-defense, unlawful aggression from the victim is not required for fulfillment of duty, Kabanlig versus Sandigan Bayan. So kanina sa case ni Kabanlig, wala namang unlawful aggression towards Kabanlig, di ba? Kasi he was abused. Kumaga nakita niya lang na tumakas, ginrab yung weapon. So technically, hindi siya makaka-claim ng self-defense kasi walang unlawful aggression from the valino, from the victim. But he made it, he killed him, he shot him because it was, although there's no unlawful aggression, meron siyang duty na dapat i-fulfill and na dapat i-prevent. Evil na dapat i-prevent. Key points on fulfillment of duty. If a use of force was absolutely necessary to prevent an escape, policeman would be justified in shooting someone to both recapture them and recover a loose firearm. Is warning shot necessary? Ito yung nuance. Warning shots, anong sabi ng Supreme Court? A warning shot is not absolutely mandated at all times. Issuing a warning shot contemplates a situation where several options are still available to the law officers. On warning shots, ano bang dapat gawin ng isang police officers? Under the revised PNP operational procedures, GR 257298 Espina versus Sicole, hindi na pwedeng mag warning shot yung mga police, general rule yan, no? During operations. Ang kailangan lang ngayon is verbal. The rule is intended to prevent unnecessary harm, give opportunity for peaceful surrender, and ensure safety of the public and the officers themselves. So general rule, bawal mag warning shot. Kasi nga, syempre yung ligaw na bala, yung lupok, yung explosion may disturb peace. So if may option lang naman, make a verbal declaration. Okay? Verbal warning. The police officers must issue verbal warning instead of a firing warning shot. Except, so general rule, verbal, exception is when there's imminent threat to life or property and no other option is available. So mag-fire ng warning shot pag may imminent threat, pero pag mas greater pa, no, just as in the case of Kabanlig, wala na nga siyang warning shot kasi mas imminent ang danger, may Armalite na yung suspect. So that's a more dangerous situation na even that at that point wala na ngang warning shot. So nakita natin to sa PNP Manual of 2021. Okay, use of firearm when justified. Okay, dito makita natin na the use of firearm is justified under the doctrines of self-defense, defense of a relative, and defense of stranger. However, one who resorts to self-defense must face a real threat in his life. Okay, unlawful aggression should be present for self-defense. The police shall not use warning shots during operations except when the police officer is outnumbered and overpowered and his life is in danger, imminent danger. So, kailan magagamit ang warning shot? Pag outnumber at may imminent danger yung police. Pero, again, the case ni Kabanlig, wala ngang even warning shot kasi mas na-establish yung greater imminent danger to his life. So, firing at moving vehicles, kayo na magbasa niyan. Filing of an incident report after the use of firearm. So, on warning shots, ito yung tinatawag natin na gradation of force. Pag gradually use ng levels, different levels. So, first, non-deadly means such as verbal or non-lethal weapons must be employed first. Pero depending on the situation, the policeman can use a greater grade of force. Okay, let's go to the sixth justifying circumstance, which is obedience to an order of a superior officer. So, magiging justified circumstance if an order from a superior must have been issued. So, may issuance. And then the order must be for some lawful purpose. The issuance, the purpose, and that the means used to carry out the order must be lawful. So, the source, the means, and the purpose must all be lawful. So, executing an illegal order may not incur criminal liability. No, ito yung nuance. Pag illegal yung order, hindi pa rin yan mag-incur liability if the inferior officer was unaware of its illegality and not negligent. Good faith must be established in complying with a superior's directive to be a justifying circumstance. So a general rule, dapat lawful source, lawful means, and lawful purpose. If maging illegal yung order, dapat unaware at hindi negligent yung officer na nagsunod nito. If aware siya na unlawful or illegal yung order, then he has all the right to disobey the commander. So nakita ko lang ito sa I think sa Prime, The Order, based on the chilling true story. Now, what if the order was later found out to be illegal? So the point here is at that time lang, no? At that time lang na he executed the act, the person, the accused, must not be knowledgeable of its illegality. The accused must be aware of the illegality of the order issued by superior. If the illegality of the order is not patent, and the accused honestly believed that the order was issued for lawful purpose, the act done in obedience of said order is justified under the principle of ignorantia facti excusat in relation to Article 11. This is from People versus Beronilla, 1955 case. So pag illegal again yung order, number one, dapat hindi siya patently illegal. And second, there's no knowledge on the part of the person who executed it that it is an illegal order. Okay? Once he is aware that it is illegal, then he is not excused. However, given the circumstances, justified siya because of the principle of ignorantia factis excusat. Iba yung iba yung ignorance of the law. That's ignorantia legit non excusat or lehit non excusat. But if it's ignorantia factis facti excusat, then that's a justifying circumstance. Mistake of fact or ignorance of the fact that it is illegal. So there's no criminal liability if the person was under a legal obligation. Number two, he does not know that the order was unlawful if it is indeed unlawful, and the order was not manifestly unlawful. Orders to commit genocide or crimes against humanity are manifestly unlawful. So pag order is to commit genocide, then that's already obviously manifestly unlawful, and there will be no justifying circumstances under those actions. There is liability if the order is manifestly unlawful. So sabi natin kanina, let's say an obedience on order of one sergeant to torture a criminal suspect is not a justifying circumstance because the order itself is unlawful. We have that in the Constitution, no? That provision against incommunicado, torture, etc. Orders to commit genocide, again, are manifestly unlawful. Obedience to superior versus fulfillment of duty. So, ang last is obedience. So, yung second to the last is fulfillment. So, yung obedience to superior it involves following a direct instruction. While fulfillment of duty is in a sense following a person's duty or responsibilities as written. The former requires good faith and lack of awareness of the illegality, while the latter requires necessity and lawfulness. So, medyo the same kasi kaya lang merong orders na hindi siya according to duty but maybe according to the purpose or bounds of the duty. But if it is in fulfillment of duty, dapat merong necessity. Sa obedience naman, kahit walang necessity, basta wala kang alam na unlawful yan, then that's a justifying circumstance. Now, that's it for justifying circumstances. We now move to the last topic, which is mitigating circumstances. So again, the questions about these were asked 12 times in the last 19 years. General principles, they show factors about the offender's lesser perversity. Ang pinapunish, again, under the classical theory is ang tao ay pinaparusahan according sa kanyang alam na ang isang bagay ay mali. So it presumes that all men are intelligent, have a sense of morality. But if a person has these mitigating circumstances, then mas mababa yung kanyang parusa. So it makes the crime less severe based on diminished freedom, intelligence, or negligence. At add na rin natin dyan yung medyo mas higher yung kanyang sense of what is good, no? Compared sa others who committed the crime without mitigating. So they reduce the penalty for a crime, lower the penalty to the minimum period if the penalty is divisible. A privileged mitigating circumstance lowers the penalty by 1 or more degrees whether the penalty is divisible or indivisible. So yung mitigating circumstance, magiging minimum siya pag divisible. Pero pag privileged, 1 degree or more. So may chart ako rito na very familiar ito. Makikita natin to sa page 44 ng RPC. If you have a revised penal code, you can find this. So yung periods are these 1/3 divisions from the third column to the last. So pag may mitigating circumstance, let's say, so for example, ito yung punishment ng crime. Pag may ordinary mitigating, magiging mababa yung crime. So from 10 years, magiging 6 years. So imagine 4 years yung ibababa. Pero pag privileged mitigating circumstances, 1 degree or more. So gawin nating red. Ang privilege, bababa. For example, ito yung original penalty, 6 years. Pag may privilege mitigating, magiging 6 months and 1 day na lang to 2 years. Also, take note na, like for example, sa cybercrime law, although hindi naman siya mitigating, but gawin natin yung blue. So for example, ang punishment na kanyang crime ay 2 years, 4 months. Increase yan to 1 degree higher kasi use of ICT. So that's 1 degree higher yung penalty. So again, periods refer to each of the 1/3 divisions of the divisible penalties. So yan yung periods. Ito sila: minimum, medium, and maximum. So yung degrees naman are the full extent of the penalty prescribed by law. So starting from arresto mayor up to reclusion temporal. And reclusion perpetua, I believe, is it 20 years and 1 day up to 40 years. So degrees are the full extent. So kumbaga ito, buong ito. Okay, that this is 1 degree, 1 degree, 1 degree. The green one and the blue ones are here are periods. Okay? There are 3 kinds of mitigating circumstances: the ordinary, privileged, and specific. Tandaan nyo lang na sa ordinary, it can be offset by the aggravating circumstance. So, aggravating, it increases the penalty. Kumbaga, head-to-head battle siya. Offsetting meron. And ordinary lowers it to the minimum period within the same degree. Okay? For example, again, pag presyon mayor, maximum magiging minimum na lang. That's ordinary. Pag privilege mitigating naman, ilo-lower niya yung punishment by 1 degree and hindi siya ma-offset kahit ilan pa ang aggravating circumstances. So examples of ordinary mitigating circumstances: if the offender is over 70 years old, the offender had no intention to commit so grave a wrong, which is called praeter intentionem. We will know it more in the next slides. Sufficient provocation or threat on the part of the offended party immediately preceded the act. Voluntary surrender, voluntary confession of guilt. So those are the ordinary mitigating circumstances. However, privileged mitigating circumstances are juvenile, the state of being juvenile, particularly those above 15 but below 18, and acts with discernment. Okay? So just to recall, ang below 15 or 15 and below do not incur criminal liability. Okay, only I think diversion. No? We will know it more later. I think nalagay ko yan sa isang slide. So, not all but a majority of the requisites of justifying or exempting circumstances are present. So, tandaan, pag 'di ba sa self-defense kanina may tatlong elements. Pag isa lang yung present doon, mitigating kasi incomplete siya. So ordinary lang, ordinary mitigating. Pero pag dalawa, which is majority, then that's privileged mitigating circumstance. Let's say meron namang sufficient provocation. So malulower yung penalty by 1 degree. Pero pag isa lang yung present doon sa element, dalawa yung wala, then malulower yung penalty into the minimum period of the designated crimes of the designated degree of punishment for that specific crime. When there are two or more mitigating circumstances and no aggravating circumstance, then it becomes a privileged mitigating circumstance. So pag may dalawang mitigating circumstance, privileged na yon. Specific applies to a specific felony and can be ordinary or privileged depending on the reduction of penalty authorized by law. So merong mga mitigating na specific lang siya sa isang felony. Okay? So ano itong 10? Meron tayong 10 mitigating circumstances. So incomplete justification or exemption, minor or elderly offender, praeter intentionem or beyond intention, sufficient provocation or threat, vindication of a grave offense, passion, obfuscation or impulse, voluntary surrender or confession, physical defect restriction, diminished willpower or by illness, and other analogous circumstances. So let's look at the first one. Incomplete justification or exemption. It applies when not all requisites are present to justify the act or provide an exemption for criminal liability. Again, ordinary mitigating applies if minority of requisites are present, but privilege if majority are. So next is minority, which we will look at deeper yung kanina, yung exempting, yung age of exemption from criminal liability. So if the minor is over 15 but under 18, so minor pa rin yun, di ba? Kasi below 18. And acted with discernment, there is privileged mitigating circumstance. There is no ordinary mitigating circumstance of minority. So pag minor talaga, 1 degree lower, hindi pwedeng ma-offset siya ng aggravating. Yun yung kumbaga privilege of minority. Guidelines for discernment, kasi with discernment Pero pag without discernment, hindi ko lang na-search, but pag with discernment, may magiging privileged mitigating circumstance yan. If 15 years and below, exempt yan from criminal liability but subject to intervention program, so 9344. So this was 12 years before and this was raised to 15. So lack of discernment is conclusively presumed as long as 15 years and below. So ano yung guidelines para masabi natin na yung 15 to less than 18 ay nag-act with discernment? So according to CICL XXX versus People, nag-lay down ang Supreme Court ng guidelines for discernment. It means a child's capacity at the time of the offense to understand the difference between right and wrong and the consequences of their actions. A social worker preliminarily assesses discernment, but the court makes the final determination. There is no presumption that a minor acts with discernment. The prosecution must prove beyond reasonable doubt that the crime was committed with discernment. So yan yung sabi pag minor yan, ang yung prosecution mag-prove dapat na may discernment. Okay, the prosecution must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the crime was committed with discernment para masubject siya sa penalty. Pag without discernment, well, probably there's no criminal liability. The minor's appearance, so ano yung factors? Appearance of a minor's attitude before, during, and after the crime, the nature of the crime, maybe the number of wounds, the location of wounds, the time that the crime was committed, the weapon, the nature of the weapon, the minor's attempt to silence the witness. So ang case ng CICL XXX is illustrative of this principle. Kasi sa case na to, yung minor, I think this happened in Antique. Uh, he thrusted a blunt object to inflict a serious brain injuries to the victim early in the morning with companion. So number one, the weapon used, blunt object, torture, and then location sa brain pa. Number three, early in the morning pa. Fourth, with companion. Number five, he attempted to silence the victim to testify. And then, the minor dropped out of school due to fear. And the accused was a second-year nursing student. So, seven. Kumbaga, all these circumstances lead to the idea that he acted with discernment. The third, mitigating circumstances, sa Tagalog pa, hindi sinasadya. Beyond intention. So, the word praeter intentione means beyond intention. It applies when there is a notable disparity between the means employed and the resulting crime. It considers the offender's intention at the moment of committing the crime, not before or after. So, ang keyword din dito is intent. Wala siyang motive, wala siyang motibo or intensyon, no, na gumawa ng ganyan kabigat na krimen. But this is incompatible with murder kasi murder requires evident premeditation. Okay? Na pag murder, pinag-isipan mo eh. Pero yung praeternitionem, nabigla ka lang. So if the accused premeditated the assault of the victim but not the killing, and implemented this criminal resolution by boxing him, causing his death, both evident premeditation and praeter intentionem shall be appreciated. So ito yung exemption. Merong premeditation, pero it's on the part of boxing him. Hindi siya premeditation to kill, but premeditation to box. However, when he boxed the person, maybe underestimating the person, maybe overestimating the person pala, pero wala palang kakayahan, weak yung immune system, namatay. So, that's also praeter intentionem. And furthermore, any person charged under an act that is malum prohibitum is not entitled to the mitigating circumstance of praeter intentionem. Why? Because the key for praeter is intent to no intent to cause so great a harm. However, with malum prohibitum crimes, intent is irrelevant. As long as there is an act, there's an actus reus, the mens rea is irrelevant. So, anong mga example ng malum prohibitum crimes? Technical malversations. Okay, hindi pwedeng mag-claim ang accused na I have no intent to commit such a great technical malversation. Or illegal possession of firearms. I have no intent to commit such illegal possession of firearms. Okay, I have no intent to commit illegal recruitment because those are mala prohibita crimes. Also, it's not possible to any person charged under RA 8049 hazing. The law says, siguro by the nature of hazing, hindi mo sinasadya ang magsali ka sa hazing. So next, fourth, sufficient provocation on the part of the offended party preceding the act. So parang self-defense siya, pero yung taong nag-claim ng self-defense, may ginawa rin naman siyang kasalanan or nag-provoke siya. So kung ikaw yung umatake dahil may sufficient provocation from that person, then that you as the accused can claim mitigating circumstance. But however, may condition yan. Yung provocation must be sufficient and must originate from the offended party. And again, the keyword for is commensurate, di ba? Commensurate, an act that an improper act that is commensurate to incite, excite, irritate another party to attack him. And then the accused had no time to regain reason or self-control. So, anong examples? So, ang biktima, inakusa ang kanyang pamilya. So, example, ang biktima mo, inakusa yung pamilya mo and gin-threaten pa kayo yung deadly weapons. So, pinatay mo siya, for example. So ikaw na na-accuse, you can claim the mitigating circumstance of a sufficient provocation on the part of the victim. Another, yung biktima, he thrusted a bolo against you, threatening to kill you, and he hacked your walls. It can be a sufficient provocation. It's considered a sufficient provocation to stir your emotions and rage. However, hindi ka ma-justify kasi hacking walls, threatening to kill, based on this case, are not kumbaga considered unlawful aggression but just sufficient provocation lang on the part of the person, of the victim. So ang test is, number one, the act itself in relation to the social standing of the parties and the place and time. So kumbaga the circumstance, the contemporaneous situation of the crime or the parties in the crime. If the provocation from the offended party is positively strong, the accused may claim self-defense. So may gradation din. Pag sufficient yung provocation, which is sufficiently strong, pwede ka nang mag-claim ng self-defense. Pero pag hindi siya sufficiently strong, again, that's only mitigating circumstance. Pag walang imminent threat from the offended party, walang actual and imminent threat, then that's only a mitigating circumstance. Limitations of provocation can only be appreciated in crimes against persons, and one cannot provoke another person to commit forcible abduction, theft, or estafa because these are crimes against liberty and crimes against property. So only crimes against person, murder, homicide, parricide. Okay? So pag ang tao na akusahan ng ganitong mga crime against persons, he can pose the mitigating circumstances of provocation. Sorry. If both the accused and the victim are inside the victim's dwelling and the victim provoked the accused will benefit from the mitigating circumstance of sufficient provocation and will cancel the victim's right to invoke the aggravating circumstance of the dwelling. So ito yung doctrine under Pepito versus CA. 'Di ba? Pag ikaw ang for example, ikaw yung bisita. Bumisita ka sa bahay ng biktima. Siyempre, hindi pa kayo magkaaway. Tapos nag-away kayo. Yung biktima, nasa tahanan niya. Okay? And then, tapos, yung ikaw, gin-provoke ka ng biktima. Let's say, gin-threaten ka niya sa loob ng bahay niya. Ang mangyayari niyan is, may mitigating circumstance ka dahil may sufficient provocation on his part against you. Pero dahil nasa bahay ka niya, hindi ibig sabihin na makaka-cancel yung mitigating kasi it will cancel. No? Regardless ng nasa saan man kayo, hindi yun ma-appreciate as an aggravating circumstance. So next, provocation is incompatible with passion or obfuscation unless causes for each arise from different facts. So yung provocation is arising from the person of the offended party, while passion or obfuscation arises from the provocation itself, from the situation. Let's say nakita mo yung situation ng dalawa, the wife, the spouse, and the lover, or the paramour. So, ang sources iba. They cannot coexist except when there are other facts, although closely connected. Let's go to the fifth one. The act was committed as in immediate vindication of a grave offense. So, immediate vindication, we can translate this to revenge. Paghiganti. But there are requirements para ma-appreciate to as mitigating circumstance. Number one, there must be a grave offense done to specific people closely related to the offenders. From the word vindication, paghiganti, meron dapat grave. Hindi lang siya dapat light, hindi lang siya dapat minimal, but it must be a grave offense. Okay? Of the offended party. Okay? So let's say insult or threat to kill, and then to specific people, which includes like the spouse, children, legitimate descendants, sister, sa isang case may sister. And then the felony is committed as immediate. So ito naman yung time boundness of such act. So dapat there's immediate vindication on the part of the person who committed the crime. So immediate means proximate, which allows a lapse of time between the grave offense and the vindication. The interval of time must be so close enough that the accused must not be able to regain composure or moral equanimity. Yan yung case sa People versus Ventura. Again, the interval of time must not be sufficient for the accused to gain moral composure or moral equanimity. Walang specific time like 5 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 10 minutes. As long na wala pang time yung accused na magkaroon ng moral equanimity. Which, ibig sabihin, hindi siya ba hindi siya ba marasmas kung sa iligay nun pa, hindi pa siya na marasmasan. Nasa puot pa siya ng galit, nakita niya for example na pinatay or ginbugbog yung kanyang kapatid, ginbugbog yung kanyang nanay. Nandilim pa siya, nasa kadiliman pa siya ng kanyang isip. At hindi niya mapigilan yung kanyang sarili na magtimalos or mag-revenge or to vindicate his or her loved one. Vindication concerns the honor of a person. So for example, elopement is a grave offense in the context of the Maria Clara culture pa, no? Kasi it's 1986. This was even before pa eh. We will look at an example later on. Kasi yung kapatid nila, tinanan ng isang Chinese Filipino person. So these brothers, I think, committed a crime. Now, example, accused killed the victim because the victim took away the carabao of the accused and held it for ransom. So this is a grave offense. Hindi acquitted, but mamitigate lang. Kasi yung victim naman nang hold up nang nakaw. Okay? So yun pala, no? Yun pala, pag may magnanakaw, hindi ibig sabihin na pag may nanakaw, pwede mo na siyang patayin because it will not ultimately justify depending on the cases. Hindi naman siya nang threaten ng life ng person, and then you kill the thief or the robber, you still have a criminal liability. But however, mitigating lang. A woman allowed a man to have sex with her thinking that he was her husband. After realizing that the man was not her husband, she stabbed him to death. She is entitled to a mitigating circumstance of vindication of a grave offense because the act of the man was grave offense to her honor. Okay? And her stabbing immediately proceeded after such grave offense. Okay? This is from Divina Compendious Reviewer, page 94. Well, medyo kasalanan naman ng babae kasi nakipag-sex siya sa akala niya husband niya. Pero nung nalaman niyang hindi, pinatay niya. Well, may kasalanan din siguro yung lalaki, hindi siya nagtanong. Pero according to this, immediate and vindication of his honor. Okay? Ito real case, 1986, but the case happened 1935. So, ilang years bago na nasintensyahan, 35 plus 35, 70 plus around 40 years Tama ba? People versus Diokno. So, around 40 years pa na decidean. But anyway, ito, hindi ko nababasahin, but yung magkapatid na to, may babaeng kapatid, si Salome. Si Salome, tinanan ni Yu Hyung. Well, siguro, nung panahon pa ng mga Amerikano, hindi pa nag-change name yung mga Chinese sa Pilipinas, yung mga pangalan ng mga Chinese Filipino or Chinese pa. So, nagtanan sila. Nagalit ngayon yung Diokno brothers. They felt dishonored by the elopement confronted by Yu Hyung, leading to his murder. The incident escalated quickly, fueled by the family's sense of honor and the perceived grave offense against them. So again, this mitigating circumstance can be invoked if there's a grave offense in relation to honor, the family's sense of honor. Issue: whether the elopement constituted a mitigating circumstance in the murder case against the Diokno brothers. The Supreme Court said yes. Pinatay nila si Yu Hyung, okay, but mitigated yung penalty kasi si Yu Hyung naman nag-commit ng isang grave offense sa kanilang pamilya, which is tinanan niya yung kanilang kapatid. Medyo old school siya na senaryo kasi may nagtatanan pa ba ngayon? I don't know. Pero sa panahong yon, it's a grave offense to their society. And then, again, sabi dito ng court mismo nagsabi, as it was a traditional value deeply rooted in their cultural context. So, number 6, or the sixth mitigating circumstance is having acted upon a powerful impulse that naturally produced passion or obfuscation. So requisites is that the accused acted upon impulse, or this is the general term for passion obfuscation, and the impulse was so powerful that it naturally produced such impulse. So the reaction, and then the source, and then the act, both unlawful and sufficient to produce such a condition of mind. So yung source must be unlawful and sufficient, and the time of reaction must not be far removed from the crime's commission. So another case that illustrates this, about na rin ulit sa pagtanan. So si Sinisa, nag-elope siya, kasama niya yung sister ng mga Dagatan brothers. And at that time, yung pagtanan nila, of course, caused great hatred or passion on the part of the brothers Dagatan. So, siguro after nilang magtanan, pumunta sila sa isang bayan. Nung nasa isang tulay, si Senisa, inambush siya ng Dagatan brothers. Sergio struck Senisa with a cane while Saturnino joined in the assault using a kaburata. So, in-incapacitate nila si Senisa, and they attempted to conceal the crime by throwing his body into the water, making it appear as if he had drowned. So, kumaga sila yung mga kontrabida mismo sa love life ng kanilang kapatid na babae. So, I bet na matay yung si Sinisa kasi din-round na nila eh. I mean, pinagmukha nilang nalunod. So, nung nagkasuhay na, they argued that the Gatan brothers argued that their actions were driven by a strong emotional impulse. But what did the court say? Hindi yan nakatanggap-tanggap because the elopement had occurred a long before the crime. There was so long a time between the crime and the elopement that enabled them to gain their moral equanimity to the point na naging naging premeditated act of violence, naging murder na siya. So ang element na wala dito is there was no immediacy. So the act is the time of the commission of the crime was far removed in terms of time from the source of passion or obfuscation. So therefore, the brothers Degatan did not enjoy the mitigating circumstance of passion or obfuscation. Again, requisites, ito yon, the action, and then the effect and the timing. Okay, ito naman, examples of passion or obfuscation. Jealousy of a man who was living with a woman for the past 20 years. Maybe nakita niya yung ka-live-in niya na may kasiping na iba, and then out of passion or obfuscation, the man maybe killed the paramour. Well, hindi naman paramour kasi hindi sila married. So hindi ito destiero lang kasi 'di ba it's an exempting circumstance pag pinatay ng asawa yung paramour or maybe the wife or spouse kung nakita niya silang on the act. However, since hindi sila kasal, it's only a mitigating circumstance of passion or obfuscation. Esprit de corps is also considered as passion. It's a mass psychology. So, matagal ko nang hindi na-encounter yung term na ito, but esprit de corps or mass psychology is a form of passion or obfuscation. But sometimes, passion or obfuscation may be absorbed by revenge, which is the sixth mitigating kanina, if the two are separate if these two circumstances are based on the same facts. They should be treated together as one. Ano yung mga examples na hindi consider? When the act is committed in the spirit of lawlessness or revenge, and there's sufficient lapse of time, there's no there's time for moral to regain moral equanimity. And then if the cause of loss of self-control is trivial and slight, so hindi naman ganun ka-grave at unlawful or maybe evil yung ginawa but nag-claim lang siya. The act causing obfuscation does not come from the offended party. Maybe it came from another person and then napagbuntungan niya lang yung offended party. If passion arose from performance of duty to arrest or exercise an employer's right, it is not based on lawful sentiment. So, syempre, hindi mo maklaim against the policeman if they're doing their job to arrest you, then that's lawful. Lawful action, okay, that resulted to negative sentiments, but that negative sentiments is not based on an unlawful action. When passion arises from an illicit relationship, nagsilosan mo yung kabit mo, at let's say pinatay mo yung, so let's say yung married man, nakita niya yung kanyang kabit na may kasamang iba, kasiping na iba, at pinatay ng married man yung kasiping ng kanyang kabit. That's unlawful sentiments, and that's not valid as a claim for mitigating circumstance of passion for obfuscation because his feelings are not lawful. So, mahirap pag ang feelings mo hindi legal. No? Ikaw rin yung magdurusa. Kumbaga walang label yung relasyon. Mahirap din. So, that's next is incompatibility. Hindi compatible yung passion or obfuscation sa praeter intentionem. Kasi there's difference of intent. Treachery, there's intent, premeditation, ensuring that the commission of the crime will be of no harm to the offender but no defense on the part of the offended party. Abuse of superior sense, all of these have the element of intentionality. Kasi yung passion, walang element of control or of self-control. So also, vindication is incompatible with passion kasi different sources. Yung revenge, ang source nito is yung victim, grave offense by the victim. Yung source naman ng passion is the unlawful act that produces the passion. So, unlawful act siya. It could be another person or it could be a situation. Time lapse, vindication allows a lapse of time. However, passion requires the act that produces the condition must not be far removed. Okay, so sa vindication, okay lang na may konting lapse of time, but passion must be done immediately. But again, the common denominator pa rin is hindi naka-regain ng composure. Okay, let's go to number 8. The offender voluntarily surrendered to a person in authority. So ano yung requisites? Number 1, he must not be actually arrested. Number 2, the offender surrendered to a person in authority. And number 3, the surrender was voluntary. So number 1 is the offender. Number 2, the subject of the surrender. And number 3 is the manner of surrender is that it must be done voluntarily. There must be an element of spontaneity. Spontaneity is the keyword for voluntariness. So ano yung spontaneity? So the important concept on voluntary surrender is the idea of spontaneity. It means unforced. It means voluntary. There must be no vitiation of consent. So the intent or the reason of the surrendering accused must be either of the two. Number 1, to acknowledge his guilt, his wrong before the authorities. Or number 2, to save the government time and resources in capturing them. So those must be the only two. If there are other reasons, then it's not voluntary surrender. If the accused has no other options, or if the arrest is inevitable, then the surrender is not voluntary. So yung sa mga pelikula na nahuli sila, nasa dead end na sila, tapos nakagano na sila sa wall, and then they may argue that they have voluntarily surrendered and they're entitled to mitigating circumstance, then it's not voluntary surrender. The conduct of the accused, not just their intention, must be considered. So there must be both intent and external act. Second, voluntary surrender presupposes repentance, or it assumes or presumes that the the surrenderee or the person who surrenders repented of his wrongdoings. It reminds us of the principle that if we submit ourselves, okay, we will have the reward. What is the reward? He will flee. This person, the unwanted person, will flee, and then he will come near to you. That's a great reminder that if a person just merely acknowledges their guilt, ang problema kasi maraming tao hindi sila nag-aamin. Yung saying nila sa buhay, ang saying nila is hindi gid mag-ako. Wag talagang aamin. And that is a sad philosophy because the more you deny, the greater will be the penalty. And once there's voluntary surrender, then there's mitigation, at least by principle. Okay, and that recognizes the rehabilitative aspect of criminal law, that a person who surrenders displays lesser perversity than the one who escapes. Okay, wash your hands, purify. Once kalaban kasi natin is being double-minded. Okay, so another analogous to voluntary surrender are, number one, the fact that an arrest order has already been issued is not a bar to considering the circumstance. Kahit may na-issue ng arrest order, if nag-voluntary surrender siya, then that's still voluntary. Voluntarily taking a stolen cow back to authorities to save the time and effort can be analogous to voluntary surrender. Well, kasi once you deliver the cow, once you deliver the stolen goods, that is tantamount to also to surrendering yourself. Restitution of the funds malversed is only a mitigating circumstance, similar and analogous to voluntary surrender. So, restitution of the funds, when he automatically knew that it was a wrongdoing, it's a malversation, then it's analogous to although there's a liability there, but the moment he knew he is already violating, then he surrenders. He returns the funds. Cases when surrender was not deemed voluntary, where the accused went to the barangay chairman after a killing to seek protection. So, yung kanina yung dalawang motive. Pag yung motive ng surrender, ang nag-surrender na person is to seek protection, not to save the government or not to acknowledge guilt, but to seek protection from the angry mob, then that's not voluntary surrender. Where the offending policeman went to the police authorities merely to report an incident and did not express a desire to take responsibility of the crimes. May case na policeman yung accused, and then they went to their own brothers, and it was not counted. It was not appreciated as a voluntary surrender. Where barangay authorities had to search for the accused, yes. Where there was considerable interval of time between the crime and the surrender. Going to the police station to clear one's name doesn't demonstrate intent to voluntarily surrender. Surrender of weapons is not equivalent to voluntary surrender. Submitting to authorities after being served a warrant is no longer mitigation. Because once na-serve na yung warrant, you are already required to surrender. Hindi na yun voluntarily because it's forced. There's already a judicial summon or a warrant against you. Number 9, this is a ninth mitigating circumstance. The offender voluntarily confessed guilt before the court, before the prosecution presents evidence. So, saan at kailan? So, sa court siya nag-confess at before the presentation of evidence. And what part of the proceeding is presentation of evidence? This is part of the trial. And usually, by tradition, it is the prosecution that first presents its evidence, except there's reverse trial, which means the accused claims self-defense. So, mauuna dito yung accused. Okay? So, requisites for voluntary confession, it must be done spontaneously. Same pa rin sa voluntary surrender, done in open court. So, it must be enforced, done in open court before a competent tribunal prior to the prosecution's presentation of evidence. Again, the word spontaneous means unforced, voluntary. Open court, according to request for TV radio coverage of Joseph Estrada, an open court means that the court's doors are open to the public, to whoever who wish to come, sit in the available seats, conduct themselves with decorum, and observe the trial process. I think the keyword there is open to those who wish to come and observe the trial process. Presentation of evidence. A plea of guilty here cannot be considered voluntary, as it was made only after the accused realized that the evidence was sufficient to cause conviction. So bakit hindi allowed? Kasi once na nag-present na yung prosecution ng evidence, doon na malalaman ng accused ay malakas pa lang ebidensya nila. So once he already surrenders or confesses his guilt, then it's no longer a mitigating circumstance. Analogous to voluntary confession is to testify for the prosecution. And what do we call this? I think this is called a state witness. Okay, without previous discharge is considered analogous to a plea of guilty. So when confession to a lesser offense is a mitigating circumstance. So anong tawag natin sa confession to a lesser offense? That's plea bargaining, di po ba? So if the accused offered a plea to a lesser offense but was rejected by the prosecutor, so syempre it's subject to the prosecution's approval and the court's discretion, di ba? And then ni-reject ito, but after that, his confession may or may not be appreciated as MC. Why? Because it will depend upon the outcome of the trial. So, for example, if the crime charged is murder and the accused pled for homicide, such plea constitutes mitigating circumstance if and only if the time or the crime proven is homicide. Rationally, it is not the fault of the accused that the prosecution erroneously charged him or alleged a qualifying circumstance in the information without supporting evidence. But if the crime charged and proven is murder, but then the accused pled for a lesser offense, so hindi yan MC, hindi yan mitigating kasi yung na-prove na crime is the same as what was charged, which is greater. So walang mitigating circumstance. Another is, ano yung mga examples where there is no mitigating circumstance or not considered mitigating? Number one, if it is made on appeal, 1957 bar exam, pag nasa appeal na yan, it's no longer mitigating kasi dapat yung ang voluntary confession of guilt must have been done at the first instance. That's why it's called dati as court of first instance. If plea of guilt to a crime other than that charge, plea must be unconditional, not conditional plea. And what is the rule? If it's a conditional plea, the court will enter a plea of not guilty because it violates the primordial principle that a plea must be unequivocal. And then lastly, not mitigating in culpable felonies and in crimes under special penal laws. Kasi in culpable felonies such as reckless imprudence, di ka pwedeng let's say you voluntarily confess kasi nga it's culpable. No? It's not without actual not with deliberateness. It's by negligence. Now, admission required for grant of an amnesty. Sa amnesty naman, admission of guilt is a condition of an amnesty entitlement. Hindi pwedeng ma-grant ang amnesty kung hindi nag-admit yung accused ng kanilang crime. And just to recall, amnesty is usually granted to persons or group of persons who have committed political or crimes of political nature. It could be sedition, maybe treason, political in nature. It is still necessary for the accused to admit the commission of the crime charged to be entitled to the benefits of the amnesty proclamation. Admission of insanity but later found to be sane. So the plea of insanity is in the nature of confession and avoidance. Hence, if the accused is found to be sane at the time they perpetrated the offense, a judgment of conviction is inevitable because they had already admitted that they committed the offense. Medyo hindi ito related sa, nag-admit, no? So, ganito. Admission of guilt, pero instead of admission of guilt, ang ginawa ni accused, admission of insanity. Okay? May case ngayon, no? If you have seen yung case na pinatay yung best friend niya, and then nakita siya, she was a girl, nakita siya na duguan sa taas ng bangkay na sabi niya sugo daw siya ni Virgin Mary, something like that, at nakita niya yung best friend niya na naging demon at pinatay niya, something like that. And the court said that that's a defense, that's insanity. Okay, she is entitled to acquittal by reason of insanity. However, let's say nag-plea siya ng insanity, but later on na-prove na sane pala siya. Kahit ano man ang naging trial, it means that they admitted, no, to the crime, because a plea of insanity means you admit to the crime, but you also admit to your insanity. So, pag hindi yan na-prove ang insanity mo, then you will be held liable for the offense. Okay? Last two, I think. No? The offender is deaf and dumb, blind, or otherwise suffering from some physical defect. So, deaf and dumb, blind, or otherwise. So, DDBO, that restricts their means of actions, defense, or communication. Rationale. This leads to a reduction in the element of voluntariness. The physical defect must have a relation to the commission of the crime. Not every physical defect will mitigate an offense. It will only do so if it has some relation to the crime committed. The physical defect must only diminish and not deprive the offender of the consciousness of the acts. Otherwise, they will be exempted from criminal liability. Ito ay parang borderline insanity. So yung sakit niya as a deaf, dumb, blind, or having physical defect, it will not totally diminish. Dapat it will not totally obliterate the consciousness or deprive, but just diminish. Meron pang konting intelligence, meron pang konting freedom, meron pang konting voluntariness on the part of the offender, and the effect is it will just serve as mitigating circumstance. Meron tayong example. A deaf and dumb person was slandered and retaliated by striking his fellow with a piece of wood and caused physical injuries. So in this case, the Supreme Court held that being a deaf and dumb is mitigating, because the only way is to use his force because he cannot strike back. Okay, so again, yung ang pagka-deaf niya, hindi yan totally makakapag-exempt sa kanya, ang pagiging blind niya, because even though they're blind, even though they're incapacitated, they can still act under or with freedom and voluntariness, going back to the principle or to the classical principle of criminal liability. Last, I think, such illness of the offender would diminish his willpower. So like physical defects. So kanina number 9, physical defects. Itong number 10 is illness. But remember, the illness must only diminish. No? The mitigating circumstance is based on the diminution lang of intelligence and will. So either brain or willpower and intent, not deprivation. So the mental condition must only diminish the volition but not the cognition test. Requirements is that the illness of the offender must diminish the exercise of their willpower. The illness should not deprive the offender of consciousness of their acts. So, pag consciousness, dapat meron pang konti. Kasi pag wala, that's already exempting circumstance. And going back again sa kanina, sa case ng pinatay niya yung best friend niya, there's already total deprivation of consciousness because of the insanity. Anong examples ng mga sakit na nagde-deprive sa willpower or voluntariness ng isang tao? Schizophrenia, kleptomania, schizoaffective disorder. So this is based from our cases as well as our textbooks. Note, it is important that illness refers only to diseases of a pathological state that trouble the conscience of the will, while insanity is a manifestation in language or conduct. Okay? Will yung affected sa illness, pero sa insanity, language or consciousness. Okay? Sa brain. Again ang illness affects voluntariness. Schizophrenia. So parang may control ka pa sa brain mo pero wala na sa actions mo. Kleptomania. Meron pa sa brain pero wala na sa will. But if it's no longer deprivation of control of your brain's autonomy, then that's already insanity. Okay, that's already a disease or a defect of the brain. Also, we have a thing called complete versus partial deprivation. Only when there is complete deprivation of intelligence at the time of the commission of the crime should circumstance be exempting. Otherwise, it is mitigating. So I think again yung case na yun is Serrano ba yun? Serrano versus People, na nakita niya yung best friend niya na naging demon daw. So that's already, again, that's already the deprivation, complete deprivation of intelligence. Now, psychosis, another illness, ang gin-mention natin kanina, schizophrenia and kleptomania are forms of psychosis. Okay, a schizophrenic or psychotic accused is entitled to mitigating circumstance of mental illness if, again, there's partial deprivation of their freedom or will. Okay, last pala, analogous circumstances. So analogous meaning wala sa list, but we can conclude that these circumstances are somewhat the same. So in theft, extreme poverty can be analogous to incomplete state of necessity. So kanina sa I think the first one is incomplete elements of self-defense or incomplete elements of justifying circumstances. So extreme poverty, sabi sa People versus Makbul, ay naging mitigating circumstance. Okay, because it's incomplete state. So I don't know lang kung na-overrule na ito or if it is still a good law. But the court here said that because of so much poverty, then wala na nasa complete state of necessity siya or incomplete state of necessity na siya. Now, People versus Riantillo, over 60 siya with failing a sight. So, analogous pa rin siya sa over 70. Kasi di ba pag over 70, mitigating na yan. But even though 60 pa lang siya with failing sight, then that's it. How about if 30 but failing sight? No. Voluntary restitution of stolen goods is analogous to voluntary surrender. Contributory negligence by the victim while not a defense could be mitigating. Contributory negligence can also be applied sa mga torts and damages. No? So that is the end of our lecture. Thank you very much. Please subscribe. Thank you. Bye-bye.